Hello and welcome to Shop Talk with Dan the Man. In today's video we're going to discuss this. This is Bosch's cabinet router table. Without further ado, let's jump on in. Hello, if you're new to this channel, my name is Dan Shannon. I enjoy woodworking as a hobby and being out in the shop. On this channel, dive deep into my shop as we explore tools and tool reviews, as well as chatting about everything related to woodworking. If this grabs you by the tool belt, please subscribe to my channel if you want more videos like this. Welcome to Shop Talk with Dan the Man. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, thanks for coming back. Today's video, we're going to talk about this. This is Bosch's RA1171 cabinet router table. I have the box here just to give you a preview of what this item will show up in. It's a large box. It's very heavy. It's probably over 30 pounds for size. Gives you a little information on it. This router table is 25 by 15 and a half. It's smooth laminate work surface. So the top of it is smooth laminate. It comes with 2 feather boards, and let's kind of dive into it. So first, I'm going to give you a video of me building this. It was a little tricky, I must say. The directions to install this is not very detailed. It's not very well done. You got a bag of bolts and nothing's really labeled. It does tell you what the bolts are in the book, but it doesn't really have any stickers on any of the bolts. They're just in bags. So it was a little complicated putting it together, but if you take your time like I did, you can install this no problem. It comes in this box, which isn't very thick, so all this was broken down probably about this high, I would say. So the top, the sides, the base, the door, everything was collapsed into a nice manageable package. But so yeah, let's show you that video right now, and then after that we're going to jump into the specs on this. So what does it come with, for features, what router do I have installed on this router table, what did I end up going with, and then we'll jump into some hands-on. So I'll run a few boards through this router table. You can kind of see how it works, and then we'll dive into some final thoughts. So overall, why did I get this unit? What other units is there out there in comparison? And basically, should you buy this in the end? So let's jump into that now. We'll go into the building of this unit. So building. can see the build of this cabinet router table. I walked you through that, and once we get it all set up and ready to roll, you can see that it looks quite nice. The build quality is really nice. The door, you have a nice little hole here for an access, and there is a magnet on the side here, so we'll just kind of dive down a little deep to the bottom. So you can see here there's a magnet that latches the door, and there's a metal bracket on the door itself. Here you have your on and off switch for your router, and your corded router plugs into the back of this. You can also plug in a shop vac. There is 2 plug outlets on the back of this, so if you're running a shop vac, you don't have to worry about firing it up. Just plug it into here. You do have an access port on the back to run your wiring through for your shop vac, and also this unit's plug from this device will run into your power bar or your plug on your wall. And it's got a nice safety switch. You can just pull this out and it won't fire on the unit. So if you have kids around, or if you're not wanting it to fire up by accident, you can remove the safety feature here. Gives you some warnings on this information here for this particular tool. What I like about the cabinet part of this is you can store all your stuff, so your bag of all different things, you can store that in there. Eventually I want to put a magnet strip on the door so I can hold my wrenches and different things will just snap onto the door, so I always know where those are. So that's kind of a look on the inside. This router, I'll put the model number up here in the corner so you can see what model number this router is. And I did buy this router. This is a Bosch router as well for this unit, because you can raise and lower this router through the top with the adjustment Allen key. It will raise and lower the router. So just for convenience and everything else, I figure why not buy Bosch with Bosch, just to make them work well together. But this does have a universal plate on it, so you can look up the list of routers that will work with this table. So don't worry about that. If you do have a router that's not Bosch, just kind of look that up to make sure before you purchase this. So that's the base. Let's kind of head up to the top. So you can actually, another thing to note, you can hook on 2 vacuums. You can put a vacuum down there in that hole, and you can also put one up behind the fence. Which that we're up to the top. It did come with a bunch of hardware, and I will jump into that after we talk about the top part. So you do have a nice miter track on the top part, and that's really great. If you have a miter fence, you can run boards this way. If you have a smaller end that's not running to the feed fence, you can actually run it with the miter gauge. But it's also really nice for a feather board. So we have 2 feather boards that come with it on the top, but you can get a 3rd one, at some point I will, that slides in this miter track to hold the material to the router bit to keep it from kicking out. So that's a great thing that Bosch did by having this miter track on the front. These feather boards are really nice. They seem to work well. They got flexible fins. As you can see there, when you put your material through, there's some give. They're adjustable, so depending on the height of the stock you're putting through. That'll change, of course. And then same on the other side, so when your material goes through, it will grab it on the other side for the feather board. This here is a nice protector. Works for 2 reasons. Keeps your fingers kind of away as you're running the stock, so just to keep you mindful. And also there's lots of chips you'll see with the hands-on that will fire from your router bit. So kind of does a barrier. And on the back side, you can see this hole here. That is where your suction for your shop vac will hook up, and everything will be pulled to the back. There is some debris that falls down in through the hole on the base, or on the top rather. It'll fall down through the cracks. But I'll move the fence back and kind of give you a better view of the top. So in order to move the fence back, I'll just see if I can get around the back side here. So you'll notice here on the back side of the fence, there's 2 adjustment bolts. So you just loosen them, one on this side, and then go over to your other side and loosen that one. And there's a track that runs along. You can see the hole here, and it's notched for the bolt. The bolt runs through, and then it grabs, of course, the adjustment knob. So you can slide the whole thing back once those are moved. And then you can even lift it up. There was that cutout that I showed you, and the whole fence will pop off at that point. But that gives you a view of the top fully. Now that I have the fence moved back, we will adjust this clear guard. So in order to do that, there's just two bolts on the back, and it threads into these front plate bolts. So you just unloosen them, and then this whole thing will slide up, and you can actually take it off. There is a cutout in the front here, so if you don't want that on, you can completely remove that off the unit. Let's see, my featherboard might be too close. Nope, there we go. So that whole thing comes off really nice, and then slide it back in. You just line the gap up and then slide it down the track. So to give you a view of the top, you have all these different bolts, and of course on the back side there's some more bolts. And what those are for is, depending on your router, the plate, the bottom base plate of your router will attach to different bolts, which is really nice. So like I said, you don't have to have a Bosch router for this unit. You can have a different one, and the bolt pattern, you just got to make sure it lines up, which can be a little tricky to figure out because there is multiple bolts here. But if you use kind of the template, or maybe go online to find out your bolt pattern for your router, you know, that would help you out a lot. You can see here there is a measurement on either side for setting the fence. So when you're running your board through, say you wanted it at 1 inch, you would just come over and double check, make sure that's 1 inch as well, and then also check the distance maybe from the edge over, just to make sure it is level, because you don't want the fence to be slightly off, and then when you run through the stock it's not accurate. Also, when you set up your table, there's a leveling kit, so there is adjustments here and on the back side, as well as the front here and on the back side. What that does is this metal plate, it levels it off with the table, so your in feed and then your out feed, just to make sure this is plumb, which isn't hard to do. You know, you just loosen these bolts. There's an adjustment screw there which picks up the metal plate and raises it, and then once it gets to the right levelness, then you tighten your plate back down. And why I went with this Bosch router is they have a spot where you can put your Allen key down through and adjust your router up and down. So I'll show you that in a minute. But let's focus on the fence for just one more minute. Some of the adjustments on the fence. So we went over the feathers, so you can loosen them on the front, excuse me, and raise and lower them. So I recommend putting your material down and pushing this down until it's snug, because you want it to grip the wood quite well, and then of course snug up these two bolts. And of course it can go further to the router bit or a little further back. And this material as well, this is MDF, and this is a plate, a backing plate. So this will adjust as well. So say your opening for your router bit this is too wide, and you can adjust that. So on the back side, there is a adjustment knob here and adjustment knob here. So you just loosen them, and then you slide your MDF more towards the router bit. So there is some options for depending on the project you're doing or the router bit you're using. You can adjust this MDF, you know, to bring it closer to the bit so that you're more safe. And you always you always want to make sure you have a good backing when you're running your stock through the router bit. So never leave too much material gap, because your stock can actually deviate. So if you can bring it over as close as possible within reason to your bit, and then run the stock, of course, through. So that's the adjustment on the back. So we had the first adjustment, which was to move the fence back and forth, these two knobs to adjust the MDF board, and then of course our feather adjustment in the front. Same thing on this side. You got your adjustments for your feather, and then on the back side, this one is your fence. These two are for the MDF. And then here is your port for your vacuum. So you can just hook up your shop vac directly, and then when you start up your machine, the sawdust and the chips will go directly into the shop vac. And that actually works really, really well. Just make sure you have your clear plate on so it kind of closes off that gap, and then it will create a nice suction for the shop vac. So that's pretty much it for the back side. I will say I'm not too keen on the setup they have for the fence. All it is a track in the back. Let's see if I can bring this forward. This isn't going to be a little bit stubborn. Bring that all the way forward. So on the back here, they had this track, but this whole top is MDF. And my only concern is over time, it's just a bolt underneath the back side. And when you tighten this up, my only concern is over time, it's going to eat away at the bottom side of this track. Now, I haven't had this long enough to find that out, but I guess worst case scenario, I can either do another track here on the front, a bevel track, and maybe use some sort of attachment for that. I've seen that done, but time will tell whether or not that holds up for longevity. But that was something I did note when I was using this unit that I was a little bit concerned about. All right, so let's go over what's inside the package and you know, kind of what you get inside the bag. Okay, so inside they include these two shims. And what's really neat about this router table, and I've never seen this done before, but you can use it as a joiner. So you can slide the shim in behind the MDF plate here, and it will give you the 1/16 cut. So all you do to set that up is you slide both of these in behind the MDF, bring it out flush with your router bit, and then remove the 1/16 on the right hand side. So then your in-feed table is 1/16 in from your out-feed table, and that would cut off your material that you need to create your joint. So that's pretty cool that they included that, so you can miter your boards. I never seen that on a router table, so I really think that's neat. I'd love to try that out to see how well that works. I haven't tried it yet. They also include this. This is a clear plate that goes over top of the router bit. So say you're running a board, say a circle, you're making say a snowman, and you wanted to bevel the edges, round them off, you can just install this. There's a bolt on the back side, and it just tightens down, and basically it sits over top of the router bit like that, and it just protects your fingers, kind of gives you another safety, and keeps the chips coming up from the bit into your face. So kind of serves a dual purpose. So that was in with the router table as well. And then I did mention they do have a wrench to take your bits in and out. And they also do have a collar. It should be in this bag. Okay, so the router that I had comes with two different collars. So depending on the router bit that you're using, whether you're using the large router bit or a smaller one, you can remove this off your router. So the Bosch router does have this, which is great. So depending on what router bits you're using, maybe you have the kit that's, you know, I do believe it's 3/8 or something, and you know, you can swap it out for the bigger ones. So that's really cool that Bosch thought of that. So that came with the router. So that wasn't part of the router table, but I just wanted to mention that if you're thinking about buying the Bosch router. Okay, so these are leftover bolts for the unit, and they do include some hardware. So say you had a rigid router or Milwaukee or whatever, these bolts are available to line up. And of course you have your Allen key for adjustments that came with that as well. And then here is some other bolts One bolt would be for attaching this, and then there's some other hardware there depending on what you're installing for accessories. These are just spacers that can go in behind the feathers, so depending on your setup and what you're using, you can use these as options. This was the base of my Bosch router. I just took that off because I mounted it directly to the metal plate, so I didn't need this anymore. But you want to keep this handy, so if you take this out and use it on any other project, you want to make sure you have your facial plate again to attach. We do have a rigid trim router, which I'll use when I'm not using the router table, so I don't really need this necessarily, but it is great to have, so hang on to it. And then these are some throat plates for the router table. So depending on what you're doing for the router bit, this one here is a pretty good size, and I had some clearance here. This one is too small, you can see, and this one here is too big. So you don't want to have too much gap. So if I put that in, there's way too much gap between the router bit and the throat plate, so material can get stuck down in there and jam, especially if you have a smaller workpiece. So you want to try to gauge the best throat plate for the bit. So in this case, this plate was the one that I used. You can buy these on Amazon, so if these tabs break off over time, you know, because they do snap in, and if they break, you can order more of these. I think you could probably 3D print these if you had a 3D printer. But yeah, it's really nice to have these throat plates available. And this is what I was mentioning earlier for the adjustments. You can loosen the router, and you just stick this down into the hex key, and then you just twist it, and it will raise and lower the bit, which is really handy to have, so you don't have to go underneath and make the adjustments. But it's not hard to do underneath. You do have the dial and whatnot, but this is a cool feature just to raise and lower your router, especially when you're storing it. I don't usually leave the bit up high. I like to sink it below the table in case it ever fired up. You wouldn't have anything available to hurt yourself. And here's, I did mention there was a wrench, but there was two wrenches, one for the collar and then one for the router, just to keep everything still. So I believe that is all that needs to be covered. It does come with a manual, so any questions you might have for this cabinet, you can find in this manual. It gives you all the information. I won't bore you with going through everything. It gives you all the adjustments that you can make for the table, different safety things that you can do to keep your stock from moving. Like they said, like featherboard in the front, which they have in the picture. So yeah, you can just kind of work through that. What I would recommend before you build this cabinet router table is you sit down for a few minutes with a coffee and kind of read through the manual just to see what you're getting into. I know that helped me out when I was building it, to have a kind of an idea of the layout of the cabinet table. So that's it for features, and now we'll jump into some hands-on of this router table and kind of what that looks like. All right, let's jump into hands-on. Okay, so here we are with the hands-on. So I'm going to remove my jacket. It's fairly cold out in the shop, so I usually wear a long sleeve. But anything maintaining to, whether it's a table saw or router bits, you can always roll up your sleeves. You know, I think that's a good idea, just so you don't have any material, whether it's clothing or whatnot, close to blades. That's a good safety practice to get into. I know sometimes you might forget, but you know, safety is key out in the shop. Another thing you want is some eyeglasses, because of the chips, and you know, any type of saw or anything. I know once you get busy out in the shop, sometimes you forget to wear them, but it is important. Same with your headphones. You definitely want to protect your hearing. You can get inserts for your ears, but I wear the muffs Just protect your hearing at the end of the day. So I'm going to fire this up. It's going to be very loud, so I want to make sure I have my headphones on. So yeah, I'll just give you an example. I have everything set, made sure my plate was attached again. My MDF is in the right spot. I got my 2 feather boards. Those are set so they grip the material, and if it were ever to kick back, you can see it won't move if you pull it this way, which is the whole benefit of having a feather board, is to keep from kickback. Make sure all your knobs in the back are tight. Make sure your measurement is correct, not only for your router bit but also on your fence. Make sure that is straight when you're cutting. And a good thing to test is to make sure if your router bit has a bearing on the top, so if it's a trim bit, make sure you either remove that or back the bit up enough so that when your material goes through, it doesn't hit the wheel, the bearing on the top. So that's just a good tip to make sure that that is set up correctly. All right, so everything is set up, everything is secure. I have my hose hooked up, so I'm going to fire on the shop vac, and then let's run this through. All right. All right, you can see there that made a very nice edge on my stock. I'm going to install this piece somewhere in my kitchen. I'm actually doing a backsplash, and I'm going to use a track like this and then flip it around. But anyways, you can see there how good that works. I'll do another pass on the opposite side just to give you an idea, you know, again, what that looks like. So let's fire this up again and run it through. Okay, so you can see there, made a really nice groove on either side, which is what I want. So when I do my backsplash, I have a really nice track to put the wood in. So that is a hands-on kind of segment for this router table. It was more the router table that we were looking at, not so much the router. But it gives you an idea of what your router could do inside this router table for cutting. It makes things very accurate when it comes to cutting, because based on a trim router, you know, that you're hand holding, that could change this slightly because you're running along the edge. The router could deviate a little bit, but on this fence and having it very stable, nicely planted, it can't deviate very well at all. So very good cut, very stable cut, and performance overall, it'll do a better job when it comes to finer details. All right, let's jump into some final thoughts. Okay, so the final thoughts on this cabinet router table. Well, I bought it for myself, and I did go over a bunch of other models. Ryobi makes one, Mastercraft makes one, you know, Bosch, obviously, they make different models. And the reason why I got this cabinet version is I wanted something that was permanent, full-time, and always set up. And I also wanted something when I have storage underneath. So a lot of the other router tables, Bosch has a different model. I'll put that model up here. But that model just has some legs on the side. It's made to be stored underneath your workbench. So if you're not using it all the time, you know, you can store it away. It also weighs way less. So if you're someone that's on the job site, so say you're doing baseboard trim, you're recreating a piece that was bad, and you need a router table on the job site, you know, that would be something you'd have to think about. Whereas this, if you had to lug this around in your truck all the time, that would be a big pain. So at the end of the day, it's not that this is better or worse than other router tables. It really comes down to preference and what you're going to be using it for. It's just like any tool in your shop, depending on what you're doing with it. And as you can see on my workbench, it does take up a lot of space. So I'll have to figure out something for the future, where to kind of store this more permanent. Eventually I want to add on to my shop and have its own designated workspace, just like my sliding miter saw and my planer. But for now, I'll just kind of tuck it into the back. Eventually I want to clear off down below, and then I can store it into there when I'm not using it for any length of time. But it is nice to have the storage on the inside, when you can store all your bits and you know, your different attachments and different things. So I do like that part of the cabinet feature. But when I said it all depends on what you do, that is true when it comes to these router tables. So hopefully the information you've seen today, how to build it, the hands-on, and even some final thoughts why I went with this particular unit over Bosch's more portable unit, or Ryobi's portable unit. At the end of the day, I did like the Bosch setup. And also, you can't beat the Bosch combo. So I have the router, which allows me to raise and lower based on the setup. So this was designed to coincide with the Bosch router. But like I said, this is a universal cabinet. Just make sure you take your router and take the model number off your router, go on their website and make sure that this facial plate for the tabletop can line up with your bolt pattern. That's very important. You don't want to buy the wrong one, because you'll get home and then find out the bolts don't line up, and that'll be you know, something that's very discouraging. So just make sure you do your homework on that first. Well, thanks for watching today's video. Please give me a thumbs up, a like, and if you're not already and you'd love to be part of the Shop Talk family, please click on that subscribe link below. We'd love to have you on board for any shop related tools or any questions you might have pertaining to workshop. I'm not a professional by any means. I don't claim to be, but I'm just here as a resource to help you guys out. And also, you guys can leave some comments to help me out in my shop as well. So let's kind of join up and kind of focus on the same thing, which is woodworking. Like I always say, it doesn't matter how big or how small your shop is, just get out and enjoy it. That's the main thing. And be safe. Have yourself a great day, and I'll see you on the next one.